Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. And now your host, EYAL Levy.
Welcome to the URM Podcast. Thank you so much for being here. It's crazy to think that we are now on our 7th year. Don't ask me how that all just flew by, but it did. Man, time moves fast. And it's only because of you, the listeners. If you'd like us to stick around another 7 years, and there's a few simple things you can do that would really help us out. I would endlessly appreciate if you would, number 1, share our episodes with your friends. Number 2, post our episodes on your Facebook and Instagram and tag me at EYAL Levy URM Audio and at URM Academy, and of course, our guest. And number 3, leave us reviews and 5-star reviews wherever you can. We especially love iTunes reviews. Once again, thank you for all the years and years of loyalty. I just want you to know that we will never charge you for this podcast, and I will always work as hard as possible to improve the episodes in every single way. All we ask in return is a share, a post, and tag us. Oh, and one last thing. Do you have a question you would like me to answer on an episode? I don't mean for a guest. I mean for me. It can be about anything. Email it to me at eyal@urm.academy. That's EYAL@urm.academy. There's no .com on that. It's exactly the way I spelled it. And use the subject line, Answer Me Eyal. All right, let's get on with it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the URM Podcast. I love these artist and producer episodes. They're actually my favorite to do. And what's really cool about this one is that the producer actually used to be in the band. So there's quite a bit of serious history here. So we've got none other than Daniel Braunstein, who is a longtime URM guest, Nail the Mix instructor, along with Raad Soudani from Volumes. And again, Dan used to be in Volumes at the very beginning. He's one of the people that was around for the inception of the band. So he only stuck around for an album and then followed his production career, which Volumes is a great band, but it seems like Dan made the right choice for himself because look at his production career. He's really excelled. I mean, he's great. He's fucking great. And now he worked with Volumes again. So full circle. And we talk all about their history together, and it's a cool episode. It should also be said that Dan Braunstein is on Nail the Mix this month, July 2022, with the song Bend by Volumes. So it's very appropriate to this episode. Let's get started. Raad and Daniel, welcome to the URM Podcast.
What's up, man? Good to be here.
Thanks for having me, and Dan.
Glad to have you both. So we were just talking off air about how you're noticing that heavy music is experiencing a resurgence.
Yeah, obviously I listen to a lot of Octane and satellite radio and stuff like that, and I'm hearing kind of this new sound of metal slowly evolve, but I'm also hearing in the pop world, I think kind of these pop artists are getting bored of doing the same thing over and over again, and I think the listeners are getting bored of hearing it. I'm hearing just more influence from heavy music, more influence from metal and heavy rock. The general public is starting to be okay with that being a mainstream genre again, which is exciting.
I feel like a few years ago, like rap was taking over, and it was like the epitome of music. Rappers controlled the radio and like the look of how it's like an artist should look, and they were like dominating, but then like the substance for that sort of music kind of was going out of the window. I don't know. Like
it was all sounding the same.
It was all sounding the same. The substance is just, it lacks because it's just one specific stuff. It's like money, yada, yada, yada. And I think people got kind of sick of it and then looked elsewhere and just saw how bands are, it's really natural and organic, and it's been going on for years, but it came back.
Okay, so whether perception and reality are two different things is a different conversation, but people do feel like the world is becoming a darker place. And certainly if people feel that way, then to them it's true. So just assuming that that's true, do you think that the way that the world is going right now, or feels like it's going, has anything to do with why aggressive music is experiencing a resurgence.
Yeah, I think it definitely is playing a part in it. I was talking with someone the other day just about, the last couple of years and what everyone's gone through and kind of how life is like now as opposed to how it was before. And we were kind of saying and agreeing that life has kind of been sterilized a little bit. Like there's been a lot of enjoyment sucked out of things that we used to kind of do all the time and we took for granted. But when those things went away, I think we're all kind of left with a void, right? And that's what you're talking about, where like, people are maybe more depressed or more anxious or looking for more of an outlet to experience something that's more extreme.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, EYAL. Maybe it's true. I mean, maybe because everybody was at home, like there's a lot of pent up aggression and, you want to go to a concert and like let it out. I like hip hop shows or those kinds of shows. They're more like fly and you feel good and you feel happy and you feel swag, or whatever. But like when you go to a rock show, it's different. Like it's pent up aggression. You let it out. Like it is different. So maybe
at hip hop shows, even, dude, there's mosh pits. Like it's literally a metal show. I mean, that's something that's totally been borrowed from heavy music. Like, we grew up since we've been 13 going to shows and watching these kids just yell at the audience, make a circle pit, everyone mosh, go fucking crazy. I want to see you guys kill each other or whatever. Like you're seeing that shit in hip hop and that you're seeing that same energy on stage and like kids love it because at its core, it's like raw human emotion. It's raw power. People just want to go to a show and let loose. And I think hip hop and metal are actually really similar. And we've always talked about this. And Diego, who I started the band with, he would always say this to us. He was very ahead of his time. He was very young, but very ahead of his time. And he'd always be like, dude, hip hop is metal. It's the same thing. It's this constant groove and it makes you want to like nod your head and it's heavy, right? It's like the 808 is basically just, it's like another version of a guitar or a bass. Even some of the same rhythms that you hear in hip hop are starting to pop up in metal. And I think there's something to be said about that for sure.
Yeah. I remember we were doing Different Animals. Diego took a Future song. He copied the kick pattern and made one of our songs based on that. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. But yeah, hip hop's tight. I don't want to sound like I'm bashing it or anything, but because I listen to rap every day, but
we're old now, bro.
Yeah, we're just doing a little comparison here. That's the number one genre, I believe, because rock used to be. And I remember like a few years ago, I felt like bands were going out of style a little bit, like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
big
like
time.
They were.
That's how I felt. And we were still doing it, and like we watched the other industries or other genres just take over and get more recognition, and it was a little disheartening, but it does seem like it's coming back around. And it's like you have to throw instruments into your music. You have to have that live instrumentation nowadays because people want that and they need that.
Not just being home, right? Like I think there's more than that. Like being home and just hearing doom like all around you. Like the economy's going to shit. There's war. There's a pandemic. People are dying. Like jobs, all these things, being home and isolated on top of this really uncertain situation. Like, I think it gives people an excess of negative feelings that they need to get out somehow. And there's different ways to do that. Heavy music being one of the healthier ways. But I do think that people are just gravitating towards music and art that speaks to those types of feelings.
Yeah.
Or comes from those types of feelings.
This stuff is real. I mean, when you get in there and you're writing a song, it's not particularly to a certain like degree to what other, genres are doing. It's like this shit comes from the heart, really.
Like emotion's emotion. I always say this too, and it spans across every genre, but people in general want to feel something when they experience art, whether that's happiness or sadness or whatever, people or anger. Art is art. And I think that for a while, rock and metal were getting discounted as proper forms of mainstream art because they're so extreme, right? So now, that void is open and it's wanting to be filled, and people are enjoying filling that with something more extreme. And you hear music, even like Billie Eilish, when she came out with like Bad Guy and songs like that, those are very extreme songs. They're very unique and they're very different, and I think the listener has been trained now to accept something very different from any artist. So I think that's exciting. That inspires me too. It's like I talk to all the bands I work with about training the listener as you go through your music career. So you train your fans to accept you for being multidimensional as an artist. You train your fans to be ready for when you put something out they're going to be okay with it sounding nothing like your old stuff. And I think that's important. And you have to keep things exciting as a band. With the new Spiritbox songs we just did,
which are killer, by the way.
You've checked them out? Sick.
Yeah. Well, I've checked out What's Up.
Awesome. Yeah. We wrote that Rotoscope song and we were like, damn, people are going to hate this shit or they're going to love it. We'll see how well, the band has trained their fans, and their fans responded really positively to it, because they like to see that something came out from the band and go, okay, well, now what? What's it going to be? I want to be surprised. I want to be shocked.
I think Opeth is a great example of a band that has trained their fans well, because they became a classic rock band, basically.
Yeah.
And there are people who prefer them before that, but I don't think anybody feels like it was some crazy left turn or anything. Like you hear their stuff and it's like, yeah, it's just them. That's just what they do. He could put out an acoustic record, an instrumental acoustic record, and with like just one guitar, and the fans would just accept it as an Opeth record. And Mike Patton, another extreme example of someone who's trained his audience well. Like he could fart into a microphone for 45 minutes straight and people would be like, okay, cool.
I mean, I'd buy that shit for sure.
Or it could be a soundtrack to like some hit movie. Yeah, it's whatever he wants. Like he's trained his audience well.
Yeah, listeners need to have more of an open mind and not like think that a band's debut album, like they have to sound like that forever. Like,
yeah,
let people change and explore, because then when you go down, when time goes by and you have all these eclectic albums from one band, it's like, wow, and I have all these worlds to go into from my favorite band, because isn't that cool?
Of 100%. And I was reading somewhere too, it's like you're not supposed to like every song from a band you like.
How can you?
I think that if every song that a band puts out is like, oh, this is a banger and this is sick and this is perfect, it's like you're supposed to experience not liking a song from a band, or it's okay to put out a bad song.
Yeah,
as a
have
band.
some favorites,
It's
have some least favorites.
Because it creates contrast, right? And everything is contrast.
My favorite bands, the Beatles and Muse, I basically hate about 60% of their songs.
But it makes you love the songs you love even more, right?
Yeah.
Dude, they're great songs. The ones I love are like God tier.
Sometimes I'll go back and like listen to the ones I don't like. You'll just come around and they'll end up being favorites, but
or not. And that's okay. But what I'm wondering is, okay, so you talk about training your audience. How does a band train their audience?
I think you have to do it from the beginning, right? Because I think there's a point where you get to a certain level as a band having one certain sound. And then at that point, you've kind of gathered your fan base of people that are expecting that sound every time, right? And then they're going to be upset. If you're a 10-year career band and you've had the same sound for 10 years and your fans are diehard and they just want more and more of that same sound, they might be more inclined to poo-poo your new material that you put out that's totally different. So I think it's something that has to be done from the jump, basically, or at least very early on in the career. But I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, there's plenty of examples of bands that have totally changed their sound after being consistent for 10 years. But you talk about the Beatles, and what an amazing example of a band that's completely trained their listeners to love the entire variety of everything they've put out.
Yep.
Just because they like what the heart of the band is, right? And from each of their albums, their sound is totally different. When they put out Yellow Submarine, I mean, that's crazy. That's I guess the old school equivalent.
Perfect example. That's the one where they almost lost. Well, I wasn't alive back then, but yeah, I wasn't along for that one.
Maybe we were too young, but possibly they were maybe getting ridiculed for some of these albums. I'm not sure, but
not too young. I wasn't even invented. I wasn't even near being invented when Yellow Submarine came out.
Nonetheless, like years later, you can see now they're timeless and now people love them. And it's like, you might not have understood what they were doing then, but later on, now you understand, like that's the thing with music. People, every time I feel like we release an album, people hate it. And then 2 years later, they like it.
That's funny.
That's another thing I've noticed, definitely with heavy music. So I have two thoughts. So one, with like training your audience. So basically, long story short is you find a way to get your audience to accept you for who you are and be cool with not loving everything. And then I think, or basically expect the unexpected. So if the audience is going to expect the unexpected with you, and that's just part of your identity and part of how they know you, then it's less of a shock to their system than when a band that has sounded exactly the same for 15 years takes a complete left turn.
It's almost like, oh, how could they do that to me?
They betrayed me.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to volumes, like, I mean, it's not like this is a good place to talk about, because I mean, like, you know, we started off as like screams and heavy music, right? And then we implemented clean singing, and people like lost their shit. Like, it was such a big deal, but it's like...
People gave you shit for that?
Yeah. And
that's interesting, because I've always known you guys as a band with clean singing that like fuses different influences. And like, so I came into knowing Volumes, I guess, when you guys were already doing that stuff. So it's interesting for me to hear that you had trouble with that.
Our job is just, you know, we want to get this music out to the masses. And it's like, well, you know, singing is a beautiful, you know, art form. And it's like, we implement that into our music, and it's like blows people's minds sometimes. And it's just crazy, but...
Especially in the early days.
Yeah.
Because back, you know, like the band formed in, was it 2009 is when we started the band?
Yeah.
So the band formed in 2009, and back then it was like there was no clean singing. And we put out the first EP, and it was already enough just to have melodic sections with screaming over them. I feel like to us that was like the equivalent of a chorus or something, right? I mean, and back then we were making songs that were averaging 5 minutes. And we thought there was nothing wrong with that. Like that, it just kept going and going. And I listen to these songs now, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so undigestible, right? But then as the band evolved, like, you know, the next album, Via, is when they were actually singing choruses. And I think that's what Rod's referring to, is like when that came out, the listener was already kind of sort of ready for some melody, because there was screaming, and then there was also these melodic parts, which was relatively unique for the genre at the time. Because basically the influences for the song were like Meshuggah, Misery Signals, and Ion Dissonance. That was kind of what we were like, okay.
Not heavy on the melody.
Right. Except, you know, but Misery Signals, they had screaming over melodic parts. And that was a really heavy influence. And like, we always forget how influenced by that band we were. And yeah, I think, so it was like, we did the EP, and then because there was that melody, it was a segue. We kind of pre-trained the audience to be like, okay, now here's a melodic part, just like it was on the EP, but now Homeboy's singing over it, you know, and it's like not so much of a shock. It's like, okay, this makes sense. And it's still surrounded by screaming, but it kind of presented the band in like a way where it felt natural. Like, oh, this is still the same band. This is just them evolving.
Yeah, Dan did a good job at doing that, right? And but then from the listener's perspective, I think some people were just upset. Like, how could you include clean singing into your heavy music? And it's like, how couldn't you, you know?
But what about now? Have they accepted it? I guess what I'm saying is, like, at the time there was a shock, but like, do people even refer to you guys as a band with no clean singing?
I think the whole genre kind of like not saying we were like the leaders, but followed suit. Because I think, like Dan said at the time, it was kind of like emo music and heavy music, right?
Yeah.
And then people start blending the two and putting pop choruses in their music, and like people really couldn't understand it, but more people started to follow suit, and it started becoming more apparent in music. And now you can't like have a song without a great fucking singing melody chorus or what have you.
Now that's the gold standard for the heavy rock song.
Now it's the gold standard. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy, because our job, we just want to get this out to the masses and let people enjoy music, heavy music, maybe start implementing more things we like pop music and these beautiful melodies, and throw them in our music. And we like it. It's fun.
It is interesting how clean singing is accepted now, because, man, I remember the 90s when implementing clean vocals into your metal band was basically the biggest risk you could take.
Yeah, here's the thing with that, is that we were doing screaming, man, like screaming, like, and you tell your parents about your band, like, oh, like my son's band, it's like the rah, rah, rah music, you know, like people weren't digging the rah, 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 you know, so they couldn't understand it, you know? And it's like, so we wanted to pivot and throw in some more palpable things. And I think it's done very well, actually, because now we have songs like Ben that are all singing, not a touch of screaming. And hey, that song's doing very well in terms of plays and stuff. And
people seem to like it. And same thing goes for the low-tuned thing and the droney song thing. Because when we started the band, in 2009, there really wasn't a huge selection of bands that tuned down super low.
Not a huge selection. No.
Not a huge selection. The ones that were there were Acacia Strain, After the Burial,
I was going to say After the Burial.
Meshuggah.
Maybe Veil and Maya? I don't know.
Maybe Veil.
Korn.
Yeah, Korn, for sure.
Do Korn and Slipknot count? Because they're so big.
Yeah, I feel like that's a different level.
Yeah, okay.
I won't even include them in this conversation. But I remember the day that the band got signed, we got signed to Media Scare Records, is I took the head of the label, Baron at the time, into my car outside of a show, and I played him. We had our demo that we had made in my bedroom that was like 5 songs, and we were doing programmed drums, we were doing DI guitars, we were doing things kind of the way people do things now, and it was pretty fucking uncommon to have programmed drums in a song and DI guitars. It was still at a time where most people were doing real instruments. And like I said before, stuff wasn't tuned quite as low. And I remember I took Baron in my car and I played him Wormholes. And I was like, listen, man, I guarantee you in 5 years, 10 years, everyone's going to be tuned low. And songs are just going to be groovy the whole time. It's going to be these bouncy, groovy riffs. And he's like, you're totally right, man. You're totally right. You're signed.
Dan's 19 at the time, by the way. This guy's ahead of his time.
How does it feel to be ahead of your time?
Dude, it was crazy, man. Back then, there was only 2 7-strings you could buy at Guitar Center. You know, there was like the Ibanez one and there was the Schecter one. They were both pieces of shit. And we bought 2 Schecter ones. Me, Diego and I bought a white one. He bought a black one. And we were like, okay. So we're a 7-string band like Korn now. That was our influence. Actually, You say Korn. We were like, okay, what band uses a 7-string? Korn. All right, so let's do that. Let's copy Korn. Let's get 7 strings, and then let's just do a lot of single note shit like Meshuggah did on Nothing and on Catch 33. It's crazy. Even when you listen to Octane or something like that, every band is tuned down, and like these riffs are all djenty riffs. You know, we didn't even have the word djent back then. We called it groove metal.
Yeah.
I'm curious about a few things. The whole being ahead of your time thing, it's an interesting topic to me because a lot of stuff that my band didn't work for us. And then a few years later became part of the landscape. So for instance, programmed lights, we were doing those in like 2007, 2008, where it was like really, really tough to have programmed lights. And then suddenly a few years later, everyone's got it. Or putting electronic music and metal, like got us so much hate. And then just a few years later, we're no longer in the scene. And that's just like people do it and they don't get hate for it. And so like, to me, it's an interesting topic of doing things before they become part of the accepted language or just how things are done. And I've always thought that if you do it too early, like it's the same as doing it too late to a degree. It's kind of the same. So what I'm curious about is, so when you guys started doing the low tune guitars, I know you weren't the first, but there weren't that many around back then. It was definitely that and the programmed drums, all that. That's like definitely ahead of its time. Did you get hate for it? And what is it that allowed you to see it through, I guess, that didn't like cause you to be like, maybe that's pushing too far?
During the beginning of the time, like this is definitely a Dan question, but I think these two, like Dan and Diego, approached this way differently than like a typical band. Like they approached it from like Pro Tools in, like, or out or something. Like these guys, they were learning all these tools, you know, from Pro Tools and all these things you can use with these DAWs, and like their creativities were like obviously like going off, and they just approached it way differently and like, you know, used computer software for guitar, you know, sounds and shit. And like, it was new to me. I mean, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. So I was just watching them do all this and it was blowing my mind. But yeah.
Yeah, because we had both spent a lot of time recording real instruments too. You know, I used to record bands in my bedroom after school, and I would do a lot of like crust punk, sort of like power violence punk bands in my school, and it would just be like, come through, I'm gonna plug you into my Behringer mixer into GarageBand.
Fuck yes.
And I've talked to you like quite a bit about this too, about like when you have less resources at your disposal, it makes you better when you have more resources. So like I spent the first 5 years doing what I do, having no option but to bring in a drum set to my room, but to bring in an amp and bring in a guitar and you know, record vocals in my closet and try to figure out how to make that sound good, you know. And I think when you have the experience of knowing what it's like to have minimal resources, then when you finally get the computer that can handle a superior drummer and 3 tracks of guitar rig, 5 or 4 or whatever it was, you're like, oh my God, the possibilities are literally endless. Like I have an actual studio quality recorded drum set. I didn't have to go and set up drums in my bedroom with 2 Behringer mics and Radio Shack kick mic or whatever the fuck I was using at the time. And it was like, okay, I can really work with this.
Yeah, and these guys swung the bat multiple times before Volumes happened. You know, they were in multiple bands beforehand. Like,
well, that's where the band started. It's from my old band called The Unborn, which we were like a kind of progressive death metal with gent band.
Yeah, but what gave you the balls to see that through? Or was it just, you were upgrading your setup and like your abilities, I guess, so much that the excitement of it, I know you know this from working with musicians, like so many musicians are scared. They're scared to take risks, scared of like how things will be perceived.
Yeah.
Just fucking scared. And a lot of them will not do anything. It's funny because you can never predict what's going to get big. So like it's all a risk and it's all guesswork.
I think Dan is a musician, right? He is a musician, but he also is like an engineer, right? Like he's a producer, and he like at the time of in his life, yeah, he was a guitar player, musician, and thinking about songs, but like he was learning how to record and learning how to use these programs, right? And like even going to school for it, and like I think those tools just fell in his lap, right? Because you were going through everything like, this isn't working for me. I need something that's better.
Yeah, yeah. It was my hobby. But also like the reason I didn't give up is I like to think of myself as like I have a sickness and that I'm a delusional optimist. And I would say probably the same thing about you, Rod, and maybe anyone that
same here
joins a band, and same with you, and I think there's a lot of risk in that. Being a delusional optimist means that you think that things are going to work out for you, right? And that's wrong, right? If you're going to look at the numbers and the percentages and the odds, your chance of succeeding with a dream or a vision that's non-standard, right, is very low. So you have to have a certain amount of like brain sickness to get into this industry and to convince yourself that what you're doing is going to work. And I think that is, for me at least, that's always been the driving force, is this like incredible sickness in my brain where I'm like, nope, this is going to work. People are going to like this. I'm going to charge for it. I'm going to keep doing it. And in Rod's case, I mean, Rod is the only member of the band that is standing today that has literally been in the band from the first band practice to today and not had one departure or issue. And I mean, I think I just want to say that I have a lot of respect for that. I mean, that's crazy.
Thanks, Dan.
To be in a band for 13 years now.
Yeah. I think it started off because I was a smart kid and I saw these 2 smart kids. I'm like, dude, their music is great. Like what they're doing is great. This is like something I must be a part of. Like it definitely came from Dan and Diego, like doing new things and having a new sound. And I was like, yo, like
I want to be associated with this.
I need to be with these guys. Like, what's up, dude? Dan's mom, let me inside, please.
My mom was very accommodating. I'll put it that way.
Delusional optimism. I haven't heard it referred to that way, but like you basically just summarize something that I think about a lot because, and I know I've said this on podcasts before, but the way I think about it is, I don't have kids and I don't want kids, but if I were to have a kid and they wanted to take the same path as me, how would I feel about that? And in reality, I'd feel really bad about it. And then the question is, I've done real well. Like, I've done real well and I'm very fortunate. And, but like, it's one of those things where it almost didn't happen so many times and, it could still all fall to shit. And I don't think that it's a good path for anybody. Like it's a torturous path and it's a very uncertain path. And would I want that for my own kids? Like, do I even think that my own kid would be able to pull it off. And if you look at the numbers, like you just said, the numbers are stacked against you. So like if I remove myself from the situation, because I do have that delusional optimism where I always think shit's going to work out. I always have. Like, and I look at it third person. I'm like, man, this is a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. Like, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But isn't that how all successful stories come about? Like, I don't know, like people doubt you're doing something new, and
they are.
Like you say, like it could fall apart. But I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You just assimilate your own risk all the time, and like, but the reward is up there, you know. And this is what you do is great, you know. Like it's awesome, and it's gonna only get bigger from here. So
I'm not an Elon Musk fanboy at all. Like I respect the shit out of him, but I'm not huffing his farts like a bunch of people. But he did say something that I think is really cool, which is that you shouldn't think about what happens if this doesn't work out. You should think about what happens if this does work out.
Oh, dude. Yep.
Yeah, take that, like look at it from that frame.
That's what my therapist tells me. Don't set your goals on what you don't want. Set your goals on what you do want.
Yeah.
If you ask someone, hey, what do you want for dinner? Oh, well, I don't want sushi. I don't want chicken. I don't want meat. I don't want this.
Yeah, but what do you want?
You got to know what you want. And what I was going to say before was I think going down this path of taking on a career and a goal and starting up a what it really is a business that has so much risk, you kind of have to be okay with torturing yourself. I can speak for myself personally. I've gone through so much depression, so much anxiety, so much self-doubt, so many times where I wanted to absolutely give up that I cannot even count. So many sessions that I've wanted to absolutely kill myself, you know, not literally kill myself as an expression. But yeah, I think it's almost sadistic going into something like the audio world, the music world, being in a band. It's like you almost have this idea of I'd rather like almost not exist than not fulfill this. It's like you have this like, you know what I mean? You're like, it's not worth living if I can't fulfill this. And that's how I've felt.
I know exactly what you mean. And the thing is that like to someone who doesn't have that, they may not get it or they may think that you're being dramatic or something. But like, to me, the thought of not following that voice is basically like, I don't know what I would do. I might kill myself. Like my life would lose all its meaning if I try to imagine what it would be like to not do the things I do. I don't mean like if a business failed and I had to start another one. I don't mean that. I mean like a completely different path in life that isn't something that's guided by that voice. I don't know what I'd do. I don't know how I'd survive.
Farmers Insurance Agency.
I don't know how I would do it. I think, too, there's like a lot of successful people I've met. Like, if they weren't, there's a lot who, like, you know, they'd be successful at many different things, but there's a whole lot more of them that I've met that, like, they were built for the thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
And nothing else. And so it's really good that thing worked out.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Or else you see him on the street somewhere. I mean, low key, man. I mean, my studio is, you know, right by a main kind of area in town. And I have to say, I have seen members of multiple members, and Rod will know probably one or two of them. I'm not going to say any names. I've seen them homeless. You know, and I look out of the corner of my eye, I see a guy sleeping on the ground, and I'm like, oh my God, I was in a band with that dude in high school.
Oh wow,
it's crazy. And when you see that, it puts it in perspective. You look at that, you go, damn, if all my cards didn't fall on the table in the right order, that could have been me. I could be the one sleeping on the sidewalk.
Yeah, you also got to give yourself credit because you had more discipline and you knew things were wrong and what was right, and you chose not to do certain things, and you knew you had to come through, you know what I'm saying? But it's your choice, you know, it's your choice what you want to do, man. Some things do hinder your life outside of your control, but the choice is yours, really. But yeah.
The choice, if other people are going to accept what you do, has nothing to do with you. But, you know, like if the public is going to like what you do, you have no control over that. Or like if the industry is going to agree to spend money on you, things like that. You have no control over that stuff, but you can control your own choices, 100%.
Yeah.
Taking ownership of that is really, really important because there are so many, I guess, so many uncertainties. And there's so much stuff that you do have to just accept, that at least the part that you can handle, you have to be absolutely on top of. No room for error.
Yeah.
I want to say about Raad, as an example, as someone that's approached things from this delusional optimist standpoint, but also has been realistic. Raad's been going to school this whole time. And so,
Yeah.
Wow. So that's impressive.
I mean, you just got your degree, right?
Yeah. Like, we were just talking about the voice in your head or whatever, but like, I guess I'm fascinated by a lot of different things other than music, and I'm up for challenges. And so like, you know, like audio engineering is cool. Then you have structural engineering and shit like that and how things work. And yeah, I mean, I'm just intrigued, and like, I don't know, I went back to school and
For what? For structural engineering?
well, no, now I'm going to sound lame. I actually went back for philosophy. I was just finishing up an undergrad, but
The CEO of Creative Live is a philosophy major.
yeah, dude, that's awesome.
There you go.
It's a good place to start. I'm just trying to find avenues for myself, as music is a tough business to be in, to be honest with you, because the business model is semi-broken. Like, you know, you make music to make money, but music's free. So I'm just trying to find new avenues for myself. But I'm happy. I'm still good. You know, I've still got volumes, and I'm just exploring other avenues and stuff.
Sound like you've got a healthy mindset. I'm a little jealous.
Yeah.
No, he really does. Raad's always had a good head on his shoulders.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, things got dark with me, you know, when you're in a band and you tend to soak up the wrong things in life. Like, I don't know, but you know, I was partying a lot and stuff, and you realize that's not important. That's not what gets your band to the next level. You know, you got to go back to the fundamentals and stuff like that. And I've cut back a lot on that. And I definitely do have like a new mindset on, and I just want to see like the band succeed. And I want to see all my friends and other metal bands succeed too, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying this podcast, then you should know that it's brought to you by URM Academy. URM Academy's mission is to create the next generation of audio professionals by giving them the inspiration and information to hone their craft and build a career doing what they love. You've probably heard me talk about Nail the Mix before, and if you're a member, you already know how amazing it is. At the beginning of the month, Nail the Mix members get the raw multi-tracks to a new song by artists like Lamb of God, Angels and Airwaves, Knock Loose, Opeth, Meshuggah, Bring Me the Horizon, Gojira, Asking Alexandria, Machine Head, and Papa Roach, among many, many others. Over 60 at this point. Then at the end of the month, the producer who mixed it comes on and does a live streaming walkthrough of exactly how they mix the song on the album and takes your questions live on air. And these are guys like TLA, Will Putney, Jens Bogren, Dan Lancaster, Tui Madsen, Andrew Wade, and many, many more. You'll also get access to MixLab, which is our collection of dozens of bite-sized mixing tutorials that cover all the basics, as well as Portfolio Builder, which is a library of pro-quality multi-tracks cleared for use in your portfolio, so your career will never again be held back by the quality of your source material. And for those of you who really want to step up their game, we have another membership tier called URM Enhance, which includes everything I already told you about and access to our massive library of fast tracks, which are deep, super detailed courses on intermediate and advanced topics like gain staging, mastering, low end, and so forth. It's over 500 hours of content, and man, let me tell you, this stuff is just insanely detailed. Enhanced members also get access to one-on-ones, which are basically office hour sessions with us, and Mix Rescue, which is where we open up one of your mixes and fix it up and talk you through exactly what we're doing at every step. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, if you're ready to level up your mixing skills in your audio career, head over to urm.academy to find out more. What do you consider to be the things that do get a band to the next level? Because I agree, the partying ain't it.
Yeah, you got to be respectful to everyone you're working with, right? The management, the agents, the venues, the staff, like your fans. You can't cool guy them. Like, you know, you learn a lot from this industry. First and foremost, you got to have good music, right? And Volume's always had unique, cool music. Yeah, I mean, you can get lost in the sauce a little bit and party too much, but if you have the right intentions, like you want to make good music and you want to be there for your fans and you want to, you know, be there for the whole community and help, you know, venues grow, cities grow, music grow, this shit grow, you got to be nice to everybody and not cool guy people and stuff like that. And I used to be a little bit of a cool guy, but I've definitely learned a little bit, you know, that these people, these people are everything, you know, like, so yeah.
And going back to Elon Musk, you mentioned him, like, man, I've probably said this like to you, y'all, at some point, but like, he was talking about when he made the Cybertruck, he was talking about how you create something and what it is that allows you to create something that is going to be loved by the masses. And I think a big part of that, he said, you don't create something by making something that you think other people are going to like. You make something that you like, and then you hope you're not alone in the world. Like, you make something that you enjoy. And
That's
then
awesome.
Guess what? You're not that unique. Other people will like what you like. The kiss of death for a band, we're talking about what makes a band successful. You want my opinion on what makes a band start to falter and be unsuccessful is when they start chasing something that isn't genuine in order to try to get success. You know, like, oh, if we do this, then people will like us. And to a certain extent, that can be a really, really, really bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go out of your means to get attention, and it can backfire. You know, we've seen it happen so many times. Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. You want to be genuine. Like, you just got to have the right intentions while you're here, and you don't want to be extra. Like, you know, you just, I don't know.
People can sniff it out now.
People can sniff it out, but like, I think that the fact that it's all a gamble, right? Like, if you're doing stuff to please other people, that's as much as a gamble as anything else. So like, you're guessing, you're trying to guess what other people are going to like. That seems really dumb.
Right.
Right. Like, you need to trust yourself. You need to trust your tastes and find a way to trust your instincts, in that if something really turns you on artistically and speaks to your soul and is awesome, in your opinion, that other people will agree. You just have to trust that. You can't start thinking, I'm going to write it this way because other people will like it, because you're full of shit. You're guessing. You have no way of knowing that.
That's how you make music mediocre. Another thing I like to always say is, I'd rather hear a song that makes me pissed off because of how awful it is than hear a song that makes me feel nothing. Because the whole point of art is to impact the listener, impact the viewer. The point is to invoke emotion. And if your art that you're making does not invoke any sort of emotion, then you failed, straight up. And that's what's happening with watered down crap music. It's white noise. Okay, there's another song. There's another cool. Oh yeah, I heard that song. Yeah, it was cool. Like, that's, to me, that's so much worse than saying, I heard this new song and I fucking hated it. Because at least when you say you fucking hate something, you're like, you're angry, you're pissed.
Feeling something.
Yeah, you're feeling something. So that, to me, mediocrity is the biggest form of failure. Truly, I feel that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of mediocrity going around.
I mean, it's kind of the easiest thing.
Yeah, I know. It seems to work sometimes, though, but, you know, it doesn't work for some people, really.
I totally know what you're saying, though, about not feeling anything. What that reminds me of is being at the dentist office and hearing music that they're playing over their radio, being like, 8 years old and getting my teeth cleaned, and like the adult contemporary station is on, and it's just like the most boring shit. But then, that's all very successful music. But like, to me, it was like the most boring thing I could ever possibly imagine. And I never understood how that connected with anybody. And as it turns out, most of those artists didn't really connect with that many people. As it turns out, their labels were paying to get them on the radio and into rotation.
Yep.
That's why they were on there. And most of them didn't last past one song.
There's no longevity to it. You have to create longevity. You have to impact people emotionally, right? You have to take them on a journey, and that's how you have a full career.
Got to be a good artist, man. Got to be a good artist. And it all starts with having you just sit there, you have good ideas in your head, and you just go for it, man. I don't know.
That's why I like to write shit. Like, most of the stuff that I write is, it's not me sitting in front of the computer. Like, I have a very, very, very difficult time just sitting with a guitar or whatever, like a keyboard or something, and trying to come up with a song idea. For me, that's not the environment where I'm going to be enjoying a song in. So like, I'm usually in the shower, or I'm like falling asleep, or I'm taking a piss or whatever. I just showed Raad a song idea on my voice memo. It was literally called Volumes Piss. And I didn't play him the first version of it, but the first version is literally me pissing into the toilet and humming a thing into my phone. And like
that's when the best ideas come out, man.
It really is. And so I think that because you're in that relaxed state, you're in that natural environment where your mind is wandering and everything is kind of calmed down and you don't have pressure to create. For me personally, like that's where I can come up with ideas that I feel like are potent.
Because volumes mean something to Dan, you know, so he cares about it and he wants it to be genuine. And so I respect him for that.
What's more genuine than pissing?
Bro, everyone pisses. That's relatable right there.
Exactly. It's universal.
If Dan didn't care, he would not care. And like, oh, you can make something and for volumes and it would, okay, cool, you know, but he cares. So.
Dude, I'm telling you, if you think piss is good, you should hear shit.
I mean, the best ideas come when you're taking a dump. Come on, guys. We all know that.
I was on my phone, though. I'm too distracted.
Or when you're just hanging around, I guess, and on your bed or something. I don't know.
Or sitting on a couch. A lot of like sitting on a couch, mindlessly playing guitar. I find that a lot of good ideas happen there. Okay, so this is a good time to like bring this up. Co-writing, writing with artists, or more specifically, you guys working together. I'm curious how that works in terms of writing. Like, what the process looks like.
But for context for volumes, like in the beginning, it definitely was all DB and Diego, like leading the helm, being like scientists about this shit. What's working, what's not, you know, because obviously we just had this conversation. These two were kind of ahead of their time and we're all in the backseat just learning and watching and being supportive and stuff. And so I think Dan can more talk about how how did it go for you guys in the beginning a little bit?
We each kind of just were writing stuff on our own just before we even decided to form the band. And actually, when we started doing writing for real, we would just sit in Diego's garage or his room, and we'd either have amps that we plugged into or plug into Guitar Rig, and he had an E-kit, and we would just jam ideas like that. And that was how a lot of the stuff was born.
Just kids having fun, it sounds like.
Having fun, and I remember we wrote the song Wormholes in his bedroom with our friend DJ, who was playing drums on an E-kit, and like we just wrote the riff, it popped out, and then it was like, you know, I went home and recorded some shit, he went home and recorded some shit. And traditionally the writing process for this band after that has just been very, very modern. Like it's been just passing ideas back and forth on the computer and stuff like that.
In the beginning it was really cool though, because like it really was just a bunch of young kids genuinely happy about like playing music, being around each other, like just having that youthful feeling inside of you. And like these guys would write riffs, send them back to each other, send them to us.
We were neighbors too. That also helped. Like all of us, we all grew up in the West Valley. Yeah. So Diego and Gus's house was walking distance from my mom's house. So I'd walk over there, you know, and he'd walk over to my place. Rod lived 3 minutes down. Michael Barr lived 5 minutes down. Yeah, Chris, our drummer, we all lived in the same area. And we all grew up going to the same shows, watching the same bands. We all went to pretty much the same schools for the most part.
And we'd start jamming these riffs that Dan and Diego would come up with in like a studio or in our rehearsal spot. And like there'll be times where like Diego will just be jamming and DB will be like, oh, that's so sick. Let's use that. Like I remember that's how Paid in Full happened. Like Diego was just going,
oh yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's sick. Do that, but do that up here. Do it.
Right.
And then there's like a song born, you know, like genuine kids getting in a room together and like, you know, making things happen and stuff. And it was so beautiful, man. Those were such good times.
Yeah.
And, you know, as like Dan said, as times went on and members disbanded, things changed, right? And became a little bit more modern with Diego kind of taking lead while DB stepped down in a sense.
I went on strike. I went on strike from the band for a few years, maybe 7 years or something like that.
Yeah, there were things that, you know, as kids, there's like 8 of us in the band at the time, and we were all doing things that we don't always agree with, you know, like
that'll happen.
We're a bunch of fucking idiots, man.
And it's easily to tick off, you know, and so genuinely things just happen, unfortunately, and I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, but then on this last record, it was actually Max Shad, who he produced the False Idol Veil of Maya record, and he's actually a commercial jingle composer. He doesn't even produce metal usually, but he's massively talented. And he had actually written probably 60, 70% of the record when the band approached me to start writing with them again. And this was in the beginning of the pandemic. So for this last project, it was, kind of Max was like, here's what I have, let's fill in the space. And then I wrote, 4 or 5 songs, and then we collaborated on them remotely because Max lives in Germany. It was a brand new crew, it was a whole new kind of method. And then Raad would take the stuff on his computer and work on it and touch it up. And then, I said this in my Nail the Mix questionnaire that I was going through last night, about how we did it. And, during the pandemic, me and Max we were being little bitches. We were like, no, we're not doing sessions. So Raad was like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it. You guys, Mike and Mike come over to my house, and we'd go on Zoom with him. And Raad was in there tracking vocals. Fearless, yeah. And he was in there tracking vocals and doing all that and engineering and comping, and then he would shoot it back to me, and we kind of did it that way. So this way was like ultra modern that we did it, but it was still like, it wasn't like it was a band that was used to jamming in a rehearsal space and writing, and then they're like, oh shit, we can't see each other now, what are we gonna do? It was like, it was already very familiar to write this way. Yeah, and the band, it's 12 years old, so there's a ton of eras and stuff, right? Like, we just spoke about the first era, which was like the golden era for the band, right? You had 2 super talented producers creating a new style of sound and of metal for people to enjoy. And so as that went on, like, Diego took lead on No Sleep and sort of Different Animals, right? And I was definitely like shadowing him and watching. And then, Max Shad, who's been such a great friend to the band and understands the sound, and he's like, he understands what this band is. He's always sort of played like a member in the background, like he was involved with Different Animals, and he'd come in and provide songs, and it would be so sick, and he ended up becoming really close with the band. And as Diego was respectfully doing his thing and kind of making his way, making his presence not so apparent in the band, like Max, we needed somebody like Max to come fill the void, because I couldn't do all this. I couldn't do this stuff, so getting Max to come on board to help us out was like the best thing to happen for the band, which led to us being able to work with DB again, because Volumes was very chaotic and not a lot of people really wanted to work with the band, but Max took a chance on us and really saved us a little bit, and I'm very thankful for him, and which led to us working with DB. And DB, he does it his way, and you got to respect that, and how he wrote Bend all by himself and brought it to us, which we're just so happy to be able to work with DB again. And I mean, look, his song is doing so well, and we're so happy to be able to work with Max and Dan, like, because they're Volumes, they really are, and I wanted it to be genuine, because there was not like a lot of people to work with, because it was just me, Nick, and Mike Terry at the time. And so and I also want to say, I think for me and Max alike, Diego passed away in early 2020, so I think that kind of gave us some fuel. Like, we have to honor this person's genius. I feel like every time, for me personally, at least, when I was writing some of these songs, I was imagining Diego was like watching me do it. And it's kind of that gave me, it was like an extremely weird feeling of like, this is something I'm revisiting that I created with this person that was so brilliant and so instrumental in this project, but that's no longer with us. And that kind of really put a fire under my ass to make it something that I think if he heard it, I think he'd love it and sign off on it. Isn't that beautiful, man? That's so beautiful. Honoring the legacy, but like the way I said it sounds so like proper, I guess. What's a way to say it without it sounding that proper? Like the way you said it, I guess. I think that's good. It's honoring the legacy but vision too. Vision and our friendship. It's more than just legacy. Yeah. Yeah, Volumes has a crazy story arc, dude. Yeah, it's unreal. Gnarly. It's like an anime show. It's crazy. Yeah. But bringing Dan back was just so cool, But
not to like it's just crazy. This band's been through so much, and
we got Michael Barr back in the band, which was also very inspiring.
We miss Diego so much. We miss him every day. It's gnarly. It's gnarly to lose a person that you're so close with and stuff. And nonetheless, working with DB is just feels so right. You know, it's his birth child, and so he understands it very well, and so does Max. So working with them has been containing the band's like sound, you know, so
containing and moving it forward, right? Yeah.
Dan, for you, like considering how long it's been, or it had been, getting back into it, once you were back in working on it, did it feel like a lot of time had elapsed, or was it just like, yeah, just doing this thing, feels like no time has passed?
Dude, it felt like riding a bike. Like, honestly.
Yeah, I figured. Okay.
And I actually felt like
you do this.
I had so much in my brain that needed to come out too. So it was almost therapeutic, or it was very therapeutic in a way, because that's who I am. Those are my roots. And I think throughout our journeys in our careers with music, like we always kind of take side steps and go, oh, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore. You know, like for me, I abandoned metal for about 4 or 5 years. I only worked on pop music. I thought metal was horrible and I never wanted to do it again.
Wow.
You know, and when I started up back again, working with Spiritbox and working with Dayseeker and Silent Planet, and starting to rebuild my arsenal of these bands and starting to co-write with them, and then Volumes popped up. I think I had enough training already to kind of know what to do, and it felt just really, it was like really easy, you know. It was fun. It was fun and it was easy, and it was just the thing. Shit just kind of flowed out.
Dan's a real artist, dude. He kind of like he dipped out and went and lived other lives and did other, like absorbed other music, right? And which makes him even a better producer today, you know, because he's so multifaceted. But
Raad's a very nice guy.
Dan's the freaking man, dude. He's got ideas upon ideas.
Idea factory.
Do you feel like, so I'm just curious, all that time away, doing other things, like even though it wasn't specifically this, has it informed like how you approach this? The reason I'm asking is just from my own experience of writing Doth songs again. It had been a long time, man, a really long time. After I got like warmed up, like it took me a moment to get warmed up, but then suddenly it was just like, yeah, this is what I do. And not just that, but like all the time that I had spent working on other things, like suddenly I feel like I just knew what to do in a way that I didn't before. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. No, it gives you a full new perspective, because the journey that I went on after I sort of abandoned metal was a journey of working on pop music and hip hop, and also doing a lot of music for TV. So in doing all that stuff, it sort of uncovered the mystery of like, wait a minute, making a song is much simpler than you think. And I think that that's a pitfall that a lot of metal musicians experience, is overthinking, chronic overthinking, and not just relying on instinct. Because, you know, especially when I was making music for sync, for television, you know, the company gives you, okay, you have to make a 12-song album, and here's our references. You got to do 4 Imagine Dragons songs. You have to do 4 Lumineers songs, and you have to do 4 Drake songs, you know, or whatever the fuck it is. And that would never happen. It would be like 12 of each. But anyway, you kind of have to go, all right, well, it's stream of conscious. You have to do it quick. You're like, all right, I'm going to crank this shit out. You make a whole album in 5 days to a week, and you're done.
Wow. And
you send it off and you go, okay, that was easy.
That's insane.
And then, you know, when it comes to a pop session, like a pop writing session, you walk in that room, you're with the writer, you're with a producer, you're with an engineer, whatever, you're with the artist. And by the time you leave that room, like your song is more or less done. You cut the vocal. The vocal's written, the instrumental's written, all the parts are there. Maybe you do a little touch up after, or you send it to mix or whatever, but there's no overthinking. It's just you follow your gut and you just roll with it. When I was able to start back working on writing metal again, I employed all of that which I learned from doing these other types of projects. And yeah, it kind of helped me to realize that I could simplify the process it totally applied to rock and metal. No overthinking. That's my thing. And maybe it's like I've trained myself to be lazy, but I think the result of that is good sometimes.
And just having that experience, right? Like working with artists and collecting that experience in those hours, you just get more and more comfortable, right? Around people.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big thing too. When you're used to doing thousands of sessions and being in the room with all sorts of different personalities. And I've worked with a lot of different personalities, and it's helped me to sort of learn how to manage different types of people and increase my social skills in the studio, which I've talked to you about before, EYAL. But that's a big part of it too, right? Is you can't just shut down and be introverted. You have to create a comfortable environment when you're working with someone. Like my bands they're not just clients. My bands are like, they're my friends, they're my family. We hang out, we do stuff together, we talk all the time. It's like, and I think when you're comfortable with the people you work with, the quality of what you create can only get better because you're breaking down that barrier.
What is your status in the band? Like, are you in the band, or are you just producing this, or is it just one of those like undefined sorts of things?
Oh, I'm not in the band.
Why don't you tell us? I want to say some stuff too.
No, I
want to say some stuff too.
I'm not in the band, but I do want to say that what I did with Volumes after I left the band, I still kept writing music with them, and sort of that was like the archetype for how I went on with my career.
Okay, so it's like you're still like a partnership there.
Yeah, it's a partnership. I think it's what a band producer relationship should be, right? It should feel like a ghost member.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm wondering is that right there. I know that you said that like all of the projects are like your family, all that, but this one has got to be a little bit more personal than a lot of other ones. And so what I'm wondering is, even in the case of something this personal to you, that is your roots, like you said, all these experiences that you had working with other people, it still must have helped you with how to approach this, even if you already had a ton of history in this.
Of course. I mean, I think that all of our experiences, everyone in the band and myself included, all the time that we've had to develop ourselves and grow up and become, adults and stuff like that, and to have all the different experiences that come with growing up, I think we all kind of came back together with like a newfound respect.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like Dan's not in the band. Like he's got his own work to do. He's got his own business, his own life. He'll never like play. I don't know if he'll never play in a band, but obviously like he's got his own career going, but he's not like in the lineup for Volumes, but like he is Volumes, right? In a sense, like he started the band. And so like we just touched on, like the landscape of the writing, everything's kind of changed, and we just did Happier, which was awesome to do. And now we're in such a great position because we all kind of like have felt each other out and have done Happier. And like now we're in a good position to really go and do our next album together. And so like he'll be the producer of the album, and like he says, he plays like that role for bands, right? You want to be the producer, but the producer, he's like, tell us more about like the role of the producer and stuff.
I mean, I think there's different levels of doing it, right? There's like the guy you come to and you have the songs and you bring them in and you record them and then you leave or whatever. But I tend to do, and I was just talking about like Rory from Dayseeker. We just finished their record, and he had a daughter when we started the record, and now she's grown up. So we were like, okay, we took a long time to make this. We didn't just...
I was about to say, how long did that take?
I want to say it's probably a year and 3 months or so, So we were joking like, wow, when we started this, your daughter was just born. Now she's an adult, but she's not, she's 1.5. But I like to take a lot of time, and I like to have a lot of space between when you start and finish a project. And a lot of that involves, just kind of constantly evaluating what you're doing and constantly trying new things and giving that extra amount of time that I think a project needs. And that's why I don't actively produce a lot of bands at once, because of that reason. It's more about quality than anything, and however long it takes is how it takes. And that's kind of how my process is. And I think that the bands I work with enjoy doing things that way as well.
That makes sense to me. When it comes to writing, where do you see the line between writing and production?
I think that the line in modern day times has been slowly disappearing, because where do you draw the line between writing and production? Traditionally, production was closer to engineering, if I'm correct, right? I mean, it kind of, when you go to a producer, you have your songs and then they set the mics up properly and they get you to have the right takes, and they comp your vocals together and put, maybe make an arrangement suggestion here and there. And then maybe, they'll help you find, patches for the keyboard and stuff like that. And it's more traditionally, that's like strict producing, right?
Yeah.
And then writing is like, you're coming up with ideas from nowhere, right? Writing is like a very kind of nebulous process that involves starting with nothing, and then you come up with something, a chord progression or a synth line or a pattern of some sort. So to me, I think the line needs to be non-existent for me to properly get the most out of a band that I work with. And I think that's what my bands like to come to me for, is like, it's a combination of both, right? I'm doing the technical stuff, but I'm also overseeing the writing and coming up with ideas and, kind of taking it from nothing to a finished product. So I think there's no excuse nowadays to not do that as a producer. I think there's so much technology that we have. It's so easy to do all that. It's like, to me, that's the bare minimum. If you're going to call yourself a producer, you got to be taking the project from nothing to something. You got to be pulling your weight and giving input. And
there are a lot of bands who want minimal producer contribution, in a sense, right? They're like very anal about their stuff and want to do it themselves and want the producer just to play the role, like minimal roles, as Dan said.
Like an engineer role.
But no, when it comes to volumes, we'll be asking Dan for, obviously, everything, what we can get, right? His engineering, his producing, his composing, his mind, right? And so we're very happy for that. So
one thing I'm curious about is, what do you think about co-writes in metal? Like, do you think that the perception of that is changing? Because metal bands have always had co-writes, like the good ones at least, have always had co-writes. But I feel like there was a point in time where it was like you didn't talk about it.
Yeah, there's no cloud over that. Like, there's no taboo around it. Like, in the beginning, we never needed co-writes, right? We had two supercomputer brain guys, right? And so as Dan left, it was hard to fill those freaking shoes, man. So we did have to outreach other people to help out and co-write, like Misha Mansour on No Sleep, Brandon Paddock on No Sleep. When you start off in a certain way, I mean, and if you don't really fill it in with another supercomputer DB, I mean, how the hell are you going to get back to where you were? So that's kind of always been sort of like an issue with the band, in a sense, because, we lost such a big soul member in the beginning. But yeah, co-writes, we totally do it. And like on Different Animals, that's where Max Shad started to come in,
right?
Co-writing with Max Shad. And
I think it's become much less of a taboo subject. Co-writing, I think that everyone knows that it happens now, and there's no like elitism over it that maybe there used to be, when I think a lot of that came from the fans, from the audience not understanding that that's very normal to happen.
Yeah.
For me, there's always some sort of taboo. Like when we were doing Happier, like I was in the room with Max, like there, and I wanted to have some say and stuff or whatever, but like...
Well, it's your band. Like, of course. I've always thought that the best bands do this.
Yeah.
Like, always. And it's just that, much like how in the 70s and 80s, a lot of times the person you think you were hearing isn't who you were hearing. You're hearing a session musician. A lot of famous guitar solos are not the rock star. They're the session guitar player. And that kind of was like this really well-kept secret in the music industry. I think that a lot of the co-write stuff got filed under the same category of like, we don't talk about it. But the thing is, it's not the same thing as the lead guitar player's too fucked up to play solos. We got to get this dude to come in and ghost. Like, it's not the same thing.
Maybe then there was a lot of money going around because people bought albums. You can give these guys hush money. But nowadays you really actually want to appreciate and showcase what the co-writers do. And you gotta appreciate them as people, as artists, and you want to spread that around, right? And for us, that's Max Shad and that's DB right now, you know. And in the past, it was Misha with No Sleep and Brandon Paddock, right? And you want to elevate these artists in a sense, but not too much because you don't want other people to steal them from you. So,
well, I think it's a good time for producers more than ever. You know, I think there was a period when, you know, the period you were kind of just talking about where it was more hush hush and you could pay people off and stuff like that. But I feel like it's kind of going back in the era where there was like Quincy Joneses out there, you know, people like that were known for their sound and what they can bring. And it's actually like a stamp that a band is excited to reveal, right? We worked with this person, you know, and it's kind of goes beyond the band because the cat's out of the bag now, right? So it's like if you have someone that you're excited about working with and that you feel like has elevated your project, then it kind of helps everyone. And I was talking to you when I did the last Spiritbox mix, EYAL, when I was saying how a producer and a band can kind of join forces and lift each other up. Yep. Right. And it's sort of this exchange of like, you know, I want to help you make your music better. And in turn, you're going to help me make my career better. Yeah. And you sort of grow. Right. So to me, that's the beauty and that's why I love being a producer. It's like I get to sort of be like a half member in every band that I work with, right? It lifts me up when the band does well. It makes me more excited when a band that I worked with has success.
Yeah, and I won't let it go too astray. And like, there's a reason why Dan's here and helping the band because he's part of the band. You know, we want to keep it as it was in the beginning, and we won't go too astray, though. That's for sure. We just keep it where it needs to be.
Stick to the roots.
Well, yeah, keep it in the family.
Yeah. I'm excited to do this next record, though. That's for sure.
We got to do Piss, man. That one's a banger. We could just start it with the sound of Piss, maybe.
I mean, does it need anything else?
No.
His old band had a song called Piss Christ, which is like the meanest song on earth.
That song is sick.
Piss Christ.
We also had a song called Volumes.
Yeah.
Really?
That was what we named the band after. And Gus, the original vocalist, was in that band with me. And that was kind of where it was.
Interesting.
Fun fact.
See, Daniel walked so we could fly. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he had a band before our band that was like the band, the sickest band with the sickest sound. And
Rod was our biggest fan, dude. Literally.
Me and Diego are their biggest fans for
Diego,
sure.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
We used to go to their shows, and me and Diego would be up front. We'd be side by side, but I had no idea who the fuck this kid was. But later on, we'd be in a band together, which is cool.
It's cool how that shit works out.
Yeah. I met my band boyfriend at an Unborn show.
As far as production goes, what's the partnership like? So we talked about the writing side of it. I guess, Dan, when you're working with a co-producer in a band or the band is the co-producer, how does that change at all how you approach things as opposed to when, I guess, there isn't a co-producer?
To a certain extent, when you're working with a band that's capable, you're always working with a co-producer.
Fair enough.
I think it's discrediting to say that the members of the band, or at least the primary writing member of the band, is not also a producer. I'm a strong believer in that because, like we were saying, the lines between writing and producing, it's so blurry. I mean, I think anything that anyone brings to the table that elevates the song in any way is producing. So I am always an advocate of sharing that credit with whomever it is in the band that's actively doing that. And because of technology, I don't hold like a golden key, like, oh, I have the studio, so I'm the producer. Anyone in any of the projects I work with, and it is this way, is the active member is always sending me stuff with more than just guitar or more than just, you know, a bare bones song. You know, people are really producing stuff. You know, Mitch from Silent Planet, Mike from Spiritbox, Rod over here, you know, everyone is always bringing ideas to the table that are more than just sitting in the room going, okay, Dan, we're ready for you to produce us, you know?
Yeah, that would be unfair and it would be whack because it is putting a lot of stress on the guy. But I think like Dan said, it's managing personalities and preparing for these sessions, right? If you know you're going to work with a band that has a lot of cooks in the kitchen, like 3 personalities, like it's all about finding a balance between where you're going to be, where your role is and where the band is. And that's what makes the project fun or not, because you have to communicate respectfully and stuff like that. And it's a lot to manage when there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
I forgot to mention Rory from Dayseeker as well.
But we'll be able to manage the volumes one coming soon. I'm pretty sure it's nothing too crazy.
It's going to be very, very fluid. Everyone has a really clear understanding. And, For me, I think and I wrote about this a little bit in my Nail the Mix questionnaire. One of the questions was, what is the challenges of this mix / production? And one of the challenges for the band is this is a 2 vocalist band. So there's 2 mics in the band. One spells it with a Y, and that's how you can differentiate them. Mike and Mike are like, they're a duo, So for me, it's not just about writing and then, one guy writes something and the other one comes in and records this part and that's it. It's like, and I've had conversations with these guys are my friends, and I told them, like, we need to write this together. I want you guys to come in and feel ownership over your parts and work out together the duality of, how you guys are kind of, bouncing off of each other, because that's an element in this band that not a lot of bands have. Right. So I think that's something that is going to be very interesting to explore this time around with the album, is getting the 2 vocalists to sort of become like one mind. And that's where my job becomes a bit like, not a therapist, but like, I almost feel like sometimes like
it is, man.
I like to be like a coach, like, yo, like, we can do this. You guys are fucking powerful together. Well, let's find your strengths. Let's sit in the room together. Let's go grab some beers and talk about it. Whatever. It's a lot of prep to sort of get the expectations set even before you start creating.
You got to know your role, right? And it's good to establish your roles beforehand, because we've done records where you don't establish your roles and things get mixed up and it gets messy and stuff. But there will be times where you have to step back and let other people take lead. And that's comes with mental maturity and being mature as an artist, and like just letting the process go. And number one, you got to do what's best for the song, right? For the band. And maybe you don't have the best idea and you have to back off and not take it personal and stuff like that. And it's just managing your expectations. And it's funny because, we used to be very hard to manage in the studio. Tons of personalities, heavy personalities. It was conflicting and hard to
Hilarious personalities, though.
And it can tear you apart. Even though it can make good music, it'll tear you apart from the inside, So, it's not like we have it all figured out. We're going to have to go through some hurdles together and respect each other and just make it through at the end,
Looking forward to what the future brings, and very much looking forward to the Nail the Mix session.
Yeah, dude.
I'm fucking stoked on it, but I think this is a good place to end the episode. I want to thank both of you for taking the time to hang out.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thanks, Dan, for having me here as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Total pleasure, as always. All right, then. Another URM podcast episode in the bag. Please remember to share our episodes with your friends, as well as post them to your Facebook and Instagram or any social media you use. Please tag me at EYAL Levy URM Audio, at URM Academy, and of course, tag our guests as well. I mean, they really do appreciate it. In addition, do you have any questions for me about anything? Email them to me at eyal@urm.academy. That's EYAL @urm.academy, and use the subject line, answer me, EYAL. All right, then. Till next time, happy mixing.
You've been listening to the Unstoppable Recording Machine podcast. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit urm.academy and press the podcast link today.